Once upon a time, finding a podcast was fairly simple. You opened Apple Podcasts or perhaps Spotify, you searched for a show, browsed the category, saw what was trending, and pressed play. Today, people don't necessarily go looking for a podcast. They go looking for something else. An answer, a person, a story, an opinion, or a solution to a problem. And somewhere along the way, they discover a podcast. That's the evolution of the podcast search. Hi, my name is Tony Doe, and this is Into the Podverse, innovation, challenges, and opportunities in podcasting from an African perspective. Welcome. First came directory search. You wanted a podcast, so you went into Apple Podcasts or another podcast app and searched for one. Then came web search. Google became the place where people searched for subjects, and podcast episodes increasingly became part of the answer. Then came social discovery. You see a clip on Instagram, a quote on X, a recommendation from someone you follow, a WhatsApp status. You weren't searching for a podcast at all, but the podcast found you. And then came YouTube. This is where things get particularly interesting. Edison Research's 2026 Infinite Dial found that 57% of Americans aged 12 and over have both listened to and watched podcasts. And YouTube itself tells podcasters to think about search, use the actual show name, provide a detailed description, and make individual episodes discoverable through their titles. Edison found in its 2025 research that among Gen Z podcast listeners, YouTube search was the leading method of discovering podcasts. So the question has changed. It used to be, where do I find podcasts? Now it is increasingly, where do I find the answer? And that changes how we make podcasts. Your episode title cannot simply be Episode 47, The Future of Marketing. It may need to become how AI is changing marketing jobs in 2026. One describes a podcast episode. The other describes a problem somebody might actually search for. And now we have another layer entering the picture, AI search. People are increasingly asking AI assistants questions rather than typing traditional searches into Google. That means podcasts have another discovery challenge, making their ideas, expertise, and conversations understandable to machines as well as humans. Which brings us to a rather important conclusion. Podcast SEO is no longer just about ranking a podcast. It's about making the knowledge inside the podcast discoverable. The episode title matters, the description matters, the transcript matters, the guest's name matters, the questions you answer all matter. Is that all? Well, the clips you publish matter as well. And increasingly, the context surrounding an episode matters. Because the future of podcast discovery may not begin with find me a podcast. It may begin with who has talked intelligently about this. And if your podcast is the answer, hey, you've won the search. The podcast has evolved from something people browse for into something they can discover while searching for knowledge. And that may be one of the biggest changes podcasting has experienced since RSS itself. The search box is no longer necessarily inside the podcast app. The search box is everywhere. RSS.com has launched HLS video podcasting, allowing podcasters to distribute video through Apple Podcasts and Podcasting 2.0 apps, while also putting advertising into those video episodes. And the ads can run from your very first episode, with podcasters receiving 70% of the advertising revenue. No waiting to hit some magic audience number before you can start earning. The timing is interesting because YouTube continues to operate on a very different model. You build the audience, meet the eligibility requirements, and then you qualify for a share of the advertising revenue. RSS.com is basically saying, why wait? If you've already built a podcast people want to watch, your video shouldn't just be another piece of content sitting on YouTube. It can be another revenue stream attached to the podcast itself. YouTube may be where people discover your video, but your RSS feed can still be the infrastructure underneath it, distribution, ownership, and now potentially monetization. So how do you actually move your podcast from one host to another? This is one of those things that sounds much more frightening than it actually is. You have a podcast on Buzzsprout, Libsyn, Podbean, Spotify for Creators, Acast, or wherever. Then you discover another host that gives you preferred analytics, more control, or monetization options that make more sense for your podcast. And you think, but I've already built this podcast. Am I going to lose everything? No, you don't have to start again. The thing you're moving is essentially the hosting of your podcast, not the podcast itself. And the key to that is your RSS feed. Think of the RSS feed as the permanent address book for your podcast. Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and the other directories use that feed to know where your episodes are and where to get new ones. So when you migrate, the first thing you need is your existing RSS feed URL. You give that to the new host. For example, RSS.com has an import process where you submit your existing podcast feed, verify that you own the show, and they import the podcast and its episodes into your new account. They specifically tell you not to create a new podcast first because the import process creates it for you. Your old host should remain active while this is happening. Then comes the really important bit. The redirect. Your old RSS feed needs to tell podcast directories, apps, and subscribers that the podcast has moved, get the new episodes from this address instead. And that's what a 301 redirect does. It's rather like changing your phone number, but setting up call forwarding from the old number to the new one. RSS.com says the redirect is what allows directories and subscribers to follow the new feed and recommends keeping the old hosting active for a forwarding period after the migration. And that's why you shouldn't simply cancel your old hosting account the moment your episodes appear on the new one. Import first, redirect second, confirm everything is working, cancel the old host last. If you're considering moving because you want to explore monetization, the hosting platform becomes more than somewhere to park your audio. RSS.com's paid program, for example, becomes available once a podcast has more than 10 downloads in the previous month and payouts are connected to PayPal. And for Nigerian creators, Paga now supports linking a Nigerian PayPal account to a Paga wallet, allowing eligible users to withdraw their PayPal USD balance into their Paga Nigerian wallet. So you can see why I'm increasingly telling podcasters, don't just choose a host because it's where you've always uploaded your episodes. Ask what the host can do for the business you're trying to build. And if your answer is, I want this podcast to make money, then monetization, payments, analytics, distribution, and ownership should all be part of the conversation. The good news, you don't have to throw away the podcast you've already built to get there. Sometimes you just need to move the house. If you're considering the move, I put the RSS.com migration guide in the show notes. There's also a link to their guide on setting up the 301 redirect because that's the bit you really don't want to get wrong. And for Nigerian podcasters interested in monetization, I have included the RSS.com paid and PayPal information along with Paga's information on its PayPal integration.
Hey Tony, I got an email promising to grow my podcast to 30 to 50,000 monthly downloads. Should I take the offer?
My guy, my first response to you is to slow down. I get these emails too. And if you publish a podcast, chances are you will eventually receive one. The pitch usually sounds attractive. They've discovered your podcast. They tell you that your Apple Podcasts visibility, ratings, and reviews could be better. Then they promise you real active listeners, new followers, more reviews, stronger rankings, and perhaps tens of thousands of monthly downloads. And sometimes they even offer a free trial. Now, none of those things is automatically impossible, but how they want to achieve them? That is where you need to pay attention. For example, if somebody promises me 30,000 to 50,000 monthly downloads, I want to know where exactly those listeners are coming from, which countries, which platforms, what audiences, what promotion channels, what does organic actually mean? And most importantly, how are you measuring those downloads? Because there's a big difference between real audience growth and activity that simply makes your analytics look impressive for a while. But be particularly careful with promises around Apple Podcast rankings, ratings, and reviews. Nobody should be selling you the idea that they have some magic button that guarantees a particular ranking. And if the strategy involves getting people to leave ratings or reviews specifically to manipulate your position in a chart, that's a completely different proposition from building a real audience. They also claim that they offer 100% manual promotion. That sounds reassuring, but it actually tells you nothing. Manual promotion where? To whom? Through what channels? And why would those people become real listeners to your podcast? So before you accept a free trial, ask for evidence. Ask them to explain the methodology. Ask for anonymized case studies. Ask how they define an active listener. Ask where the traffic is coming from. Advertising, social media, podcast cross-promotion, newsletters, search, communities, or something else. And ask what happens to your audience after the promotion stops. If you're making a podcast about business, 10,000 random downloads may be far less valuable than 1,000 people who actually care about your subject, listen regularly, share episodes, and eventually become customers, clients, subscribers, or advocates. So when that "we can grow your podcast to tens of thousands of downloads" email lands in your inbox, don't immediately hit reply. Ask questions first. And if the offer sounds too good to be true, the most useful thing you can do is ask the person selling it to show you exactly how it works. A big shout out to Dave Jackson and the School of Podcasting. Dave has been doing the work for years, educating podcasters, sharing practical knowledge, challenging assumptions, and helping people understand that podcasting is more than simply pressing record and uploading an episode. At a time when the podcasting space can sometimes feel obsessed with the next big thing, it's worth recognizing the people who have stayed committed to teaching the fundamentals and helping creators build properly. Dave Jackson is one of those people. Thanks for spending time with me on Into the Podverse. If today's episode helped you stay ahead of the industry, share it with a fellow podcaster and leave a rating wherever you listen. For more podcast news and insights, subscribe to the Into the Podverse newsletter. Until next time, I'm Tony Doe, and I'll see you somewhere in the Podverse.